And take a look at this. Tense moments at the White House overnight. Pro-Palestinian protesters broke through a temporary gate, and riot police were trying to stop the crowd. And Washington, D.C.'s police chief says things were thrown at cops.
All right, folks. Well, this is interesting to say the least. Apparently, a bunch of pro-Palestine protesters tried to storm the White House last night. Yep, that's right. They committed, according to the mainstream media definition, a major insurrection and attack on our democracy. And of course, as expected, as it always goes, nobody is talking about it. So I will give you the story and highlight it here today, and also discuss the way in which I think this represents how the left wing and their coalition is kind of collapsing in many ways, right? Because that's important to point out. This was not a protest against Trump. This was not a protest against Zionist Republicans. It was a protest against Joe Biden. In fact, how we know that, not just because it took place outside the White House, is because these protesters were actually chanting F Joe Biden. Right? So this was not a football stadium in the SEC where a bunch of right-wing MAGA people were doing this. This was from the left. And again, they were actually trying to break down this fence and try to storm the White House. Check out what happened here. So I don't want to play the video for very long because, you know, YouTube, graphic language, content, whatever. But as you can see, there they are chanting F Joe Biden. One person here is trying to storm the fence. I think at many points they were shaking it. We'll give you the story here from the New York Post in its entirety. So here we go. Pro-Palestinian protesters chant F Joe Biden and damage a fence outside the White House. So apparently non-essential personnel were evacuated from the area as a precaution as the demonstration ramped up, the Secret Service confirmed. So again, you know, I know they'll try to downplay this and say, no, it was just a protest. Well, clearly the Secret Service was concerned enough about it to try to evacuate the White House here. So again, are you ever going to hear, you know, the talk of the pro-Palestinian insurrection against our country? No, of course not. But of course, you will still hear about January 6th long into the future. But of course, this is not even, again, really being talked about by anyone. It says video shows the crowd shaking the fence so viciously that a section of it became partially dislodged while a horde of Secret Service police pushed to keep back the ralliers from entering the grounds. Some protesters hurled water bottles. So they were, again, according to the media definition about January 6th, they were attacking law enforcement. Okay, they were hurling objects. It says, and the sticks broken off the Palestinian flags at the officers. So they were taking off the sticks and trying to fight the officers with it. But of course, no peep. No one's even talking about this. And again, what's even more interesting about it is, like, they were trying to go after Biden and the White House here, you know, and even then, you know, Biden is the regime installed candidate. This is not a protest against Trump or any conservative president. This is against Joe Biden. And interestingly, again, even in this case, nothing is being done about that. Why is that? Because as I highlighted, when they were blocking roads in Los Angeles and Seattle and all these places, law enforcement protects these people. Okay, they don't do anything about the situation. In fact, we will confirm that here in a second. But anyways, it says, F Joe Biden, the ralliers screamed, break it down. You support the murder of children. So they were trying to break down the fence. That's a pretty indisputable fact here. It says, the anti-scale fencing sustained some temporary damage, but the actual White House fence and adjacent buildings were left untouched, a Secret Service spokesperson told the Post. Well, that's probably because, you know, these people are kind of disorganized and weak and probably didn't have the strength to knock down the fence. But I digress. Here's the point I want to finish up on here, which is no arrests were made. Again, what have I been saying? It's like, it's insane how they just protect these people, how they don't do anything. Again, you had people trying to break down a fence going into the White House. Now, if you ever been to Washington, D.C., at least this is what it was like the last couple times I was in D.C., you'll know that around the Capitol, around the White House, right, security is very strict, and probably for good reason, right? They're trying to make sure nothing happens to the president. They will be very aggressive. But in this case, you had people attacking Secret Service with bottles, trying to throw sticks, trying to hit them with sticks. No arrests were made. again, even more ironically, that it's not even like they're protecting Trump. They are not even trying to protect their own regime installed candidate. Again, very, very interesting. The Secret Service had erected the fencing hours earlier in anticipation of the demonstration opposite the White House. So they were apparently so scared of these people that they built a fence. But again, it's like, why don't you just disperse the crowd? Why don't you just do something? No, apparently not. Right? You're not even going to arrest anyone after the fact. It's insane. It really is insanity. But you basically get the point. That's essentially what happened here. Here's what I find interesting about this, and here's what I really want to highlight the most, which is I think this shows how the collapse of the left is inevitable. And I know you're saying, Vince, well, how does it exactly show that? I mean, they seem as aggressive as ever. They seem to be doing stuff like this, and the regime is protecting them. Even when they're trying to go after Biden, the regime is protecting them. Here's why I say that. Is because, again, what are those protesters chanting? They're not chanting F Donald Trump. They're chanting F Joe Biden. What it is showing is that when you really think about it, and here's why I say I think they're going to collapse, is the left-wing coalition actually doesn't really have that much in common. They basically have one uniting principle, one thing that keeps them together, which is hatred, right? That's the only thing these people share in common, is hatred of Christianity, white people, and the United States of America. I'd say that's about it, right? And that mutual hatred keeps them together. But when you really think about it, it's like you think about the left-wing coalition. What does a jihadi and an LGBT rights activist actually share in common? Right? These are polarly opposite people. Okay? And you see this like weird parallel where some of them are saying queers for Palestine, but you understand what I'm saying, right? That unity is on very stable grounds. Well, the thing they share in common is that the jihadi and the LGBT rights activists both kind of hate traditional America. But again, hatred, mutual hatred, can only take you so far, right? Eventually, you start to realize the knives start to turn inwards. You start to say, wait a minute, you're the problem too. And I think it's only a matter of time before that happens. I think it's a matter of time before, for instance, the radical Islamist says to the LGBT rights activist, actually, we don't share anything in common. You are totally opposed to my values. Racially, I think it's a similar thing too, right? It's only a matter of time before the crazy black supremacist that the Democratic Party kind of shelters and allows in its ranks turns to the white liberal and basically gives the whole Malcolm X rant of, actually, no, you're the problem too. You claim that you're on our side, but you live in a gentrified neighborhood and you're still, no, actually, white liberal, I don't like you either. And, it's sort of interesting. You talk about maybe the immigrants they're bringing in and the way a lot of their social values doesn't align with what the regime's trying to push. It goes on and on. Again, I think it just goes to show you that this coalition's on very shaky grounds. I don't know if it's going to fall apart in 2024 or 2028 or, like sometime in the future, but it's inevitable to happen. What is it going to look like when it happens? I have no idea. Let's hope that happens before the current coalition is successful at completely destroying the country. I'm not saying automatically like we know, hey, we're all going to be okay because the left is all going to turn on each other, because we don't know when that's going to be. I just think at some point it's going to happen, right? Analogy I might make is like World War II. You have the Western allies, you have the UK, you have the US, and you have the Soviet Union, and kind of the dominoes fell into place where their mutual enemy was Nazi Germany at the time. But you saw what happened then, right? It was a very shaky alliance because the US, the UK, they were very opposed to Stalin. They were very opposed to the Soviet Union. In fact, many Americans really saw them as the true mortal enemy. They come together. Yeah, how long did that peace really last? How long did it really last? It was always awkward, like I'd argue the left is. And next thing you know, 2 seconds after the war ends, you have the Cold War. Similar thing I think is going to happen here. Okay. As it goes for 2024, I wonder how this Israel-Palestine issue will affect all of that. Because really, like I said, the left-wing coalition's already unstable. All it took is a little ignition moment. Right? You throw something into the fire. And I think in many ways, the war in Gaza is kind of doing that. So how is this going to affect, for instance, say, Muslim voters who are not the biggest demographic in America, but you look at a state like Michigan, they actually, I believe, opened up a PAC. Some Muslim people started a PAC to say don't vote for Joe Biden. If they forget voting for Donald Trump, if they just sit out the election because they're disaffected with everyone, what is that going to do? Who knows? Be sure to let me know your thoughts on all of that in the comment section down below. But yeah, you know, again, as usual, it's kind of disgraceful the way law enforcement just doesn't do anything about these people. It is what it is. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens in 2024. With that said, folks, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, have a blessed Sunday. Alpha moves only. God bless. Have a very good day and peace.